Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we've got an interesting show. We got some playoff football this weekend. We got the Wildcard games on Saturday and Sunday in the NFL. And on Monday night, we have the College Football National Championship. And we've got the NBA in full swing, college basketball in full swing, and we've got the NHL starting in less than a week. We're not going to talk about that stuff today, but we're just going to talk about football today. And we're going to talk about futures bets and hedging a futures bet. And it's a little more complicated than it sounds, but the basic premise obviously being is that you hold a ticket on a team to win a championship, like SU to win the National Basketball Championship, or the Yankees to win the World Series, or the Montreal Canadiens to win the Stanley Cup. And you get to a point in the season where you might want to consider hedging that bet with another outcome, either to lock in profit or to try to get the most value out of your ticket, or try to reduce risk of your ticket losing. And we're going to go into that a little bit. But before we do, let's do what we always do and start by updating my bankroll. And hey, we started off the year pretty darn good with a perfect week. And we had a starting bankroll of 376, which I think is the low point of the show. We had an Ohio State future plus 900 on them winning the national championship, and that is pending. It is still a valid ticket, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. We did have Ohio State plus 7 to hedge our bet on the future, and that was a winner outright. Ohio State won. They spanked Clemson. So that's plus $12 to the bankroll. Our count on that was 0. We tied, that was the closing line, plus 7. So we didn't change our count there. The Bills minus 1.5. That was an easy winner. Another plus $12 to the bankroll and plus 1 to the count. I think the Bills were minus 4.5 or minus 5 by the time it was all said and done there. But that's plus 1 to our count as well. And then we had the Steelers plus 10, and they made it a game at the end. They ended up losing by 2 on a failed 2-point conversion. Winner there, plus $11 to the bankroll and plus 1 for beating the closing line. And then we had the Patriots minus 3.5 at plus money. That was a win. They won by 14 over the Jets. Probably the end of the Cam Newton era in New England there, but plus 12 to the bankroll. Minus 1 on the count. The closing line was 3, so we did not beat the closing line. So if you do the math, that is plus $47 to the bankroll, and that makes our new bankroll $423. And dividing by 30, as we always do, because we want to be selective sports bettors, our bet size is now $14 going forward. And our new count is up to plus 12. We gained 1 over this past week, and that's the high point of the season. And that means 12 times more often than not, we beat the closing line. And that means we're finding value in our wagers. So real good week. Hopefully we can get 1 or 2 more of those in the new year and get our bankroll back up to where it's supposed to be. So today we're going to spend the first part of the show in our sportsbook lesson talking about hedging a futures bet. And quick explanation, if you do not know what a futures bet is, I have a previous episode titled, What is a Futures Bet? So you can go back and look that on YouTube and watch it. And I talk in depth about why you might want to place a futures bet. So obviously, hedging a futures bet means holding a futures ticket with a viable outcome. For example, my Ohio State futures ticket, it's got a viable outcome. It's still a live ticket. It's not a dead ticket. And can provide extreme value. Obviously, plus 900 is 9 units for 1 unit wagered. So that's extreme value. Now, it is possible to lock in some profit in certain situations if you know how to proceed. And, you don't have to be a math genius to figure this out, but you have to know the proper steps. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about a binary outcome and a complex outcome. And last but not least, it is not always the optimal decision to hedge a future. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment here. But realize you should consider whether to hedge it, but that doesn't mean you should always hedge it. It doesn't mean you should never hedge it. There's right situations to do it, and sometimes it's just a decision you have to make for yourself. There's not, there's not a standard playbook here. So I'm not, advocating one over the other, but I'm going to tell you how I look at a futures bet and how I look at a possible hedge, and you can take from that what you will. So let's look at hedging a binary outcome. And this is the simplest example of hedging a futures bet. You have Team A versus Team B. And we have this in the college football championship, actually. We have Ohio State versus Clemson. So you hold a futures ticket on Team A. So I have Team A. I have Ohio State. You can hedge a future by betting on Team B, which in this case would be Alabama. So if I bet on Alabama, you have both outcomes covered. So I have one wager on Ohio State, one wager on Alabama. There's not going to be a tie in this game. So one of the teams is definitely going to win. I have both outcomes covered. You are guaranteed a profit if hedged correctly. And there may be some mathematical circumstances where it is not profitable to hedge at all. Those are usually complex outcomes. Most of the time, if you have a futures ticket with good value, you will have a chance to hedge and lock in a profit. Obviously, if you bet both sides of this game tonight, the bookmaker is not going to let you make a profit off betting both sides of the game. If they did that, they would go broke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a arbitrage calculator. Oh, let's start with, before we do that, let's start with our example. Hedging a binary outcome. Example, Ohio State plus 900. Ohio State versus Alabama is the game, and the Alabama money line is minus 300. I think it's like minus 302, but I rounded it down to make it simple. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to a website that has an arbitrage calculator, and you can see the number of bets that needed to cover all the outcomes is 2. Bet number 1, I bet $12 at plus 900. Let me put the little plus sign in there. And line number 2 is the Alabama game, and that's minus 300. And I'm going to hit calculate. And the results are right here. So bet number 2, it's telling me to put $90 on Alabama. And the total bet for both two bets put together would be $102. The profit would be $18 or a unit and a half, because my unit size was $12. And the profit would be a 17%. That's a guaranteed 17% return on all my money invested. And, that's a good return if you look at it from money in and money out, 17%. So if I bet on both outcomes, I would have a 17% return on my money, which is good considering I only placed that futures bet last week. However, if you look at it from a unit standpoint, I have Ohio State at plus 900. That's risking 1 unit to win 9 units. That's a 900% return. If I let that ride, my worst outcome is minus 1 unit or minus $12. But my best outcome is plus 9 units or plus $108. So do I risk or do I lock in for 1.5 units, or do I risk it for 9 units? And I really believe in this situation, it's to each their own. But for me, I think, I'm risking a unit and a half on Ohio State to win outright. I think I'm just going to let it ride. I want the chance to pay out 9 units. And We'll talk more about the game near the end of the show after I talk about the NFL games. But, I like the chances of this future winning. Obviously, it's, there's only two outcomes. So Alabama's considered the favorite in this game by a touchdown, but things can happen. It's a question of who's going to stop whose offense. And I thought Clemson had a better defense than Alabama had this year. So obviously Ohio State is not going to sneak up on anybody. They're still plus 200 something, plus 200 to win this game outright. So you can get 2-1 on just betting Ohio State. So why? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to hedge for $18. I bought that future for the big payout because it was offering value, and I'm going to try to extract maximum value from it. So that's the binary outcome. And then we're going to talk about now a complex outcome. And once again, I'm going to talk about the futures that I currently hold. So hedging a complex outcome is when you have a future on Team A versus many other teams. And this is, an example of a complex hedge. Complex outcome would be obviously if you're betting on whoever the number one team, Baylor is the number one team in college basketball, or whomever it is. So you have a future on Baylor to win the national championship. Well, not only do they have to get into the NCAA tournament, but they have to win it. And obviously, there's 360 teams in Division I basketball. So that's a very complex outcome. We're going to use the NFL here. It's a much smaller example, but it's still a very complex outcome. Excuse me. So as of right now, in the NFL, there are 14 teams left in the playoffs. There are 14 possible outcomes in an NFL future. Any one of those 14 teams could win the Super Bowl. Some are much more likely than others, obviously, and some are long shots that have virtually no chance. However, I did a really good job with my futures this year. I have a futures on the Packers winning the Super Bowl at 35-1 that I got in September or August, right about a week before the season started. I have a Bills future to win the Super Bowl at 25-1, and boy, the Bills look good right now. They are the second and the third favorite to win the Super Bowl right now, so that's a lot of value. And however, in order for me to cover all the outcomes, I would have to place futures tickets on every other team. And I don't know if it's not even really worth my time to go through it, but I'm not sure that it would be profitable to place a bet on every other outcome to cover. I don't think there's enough value left in the tickets to cover all those outcomes. So if we want to hedge, we can hedge by looking at some teams that have a legit shot to win the Super Bowl. And obviously the number one is the Chiefs at plus 225. And the reason I bring this up now, because the Chiefs are not even playing till next weekend. So you might say to yourself, why not wait and bet the Chiefs next weekend? Well, next weekend when there's only 8 teams, the Chiefs odds are going to go down. They're going to go down to plus 150 or who knows what they're going to go down to. So if you really are going to hedge, now is the time to do it. You got the Saints at plus 750. Those are pretty juicy odds for the Saints, but they will have to go to Green Bay and win, which will be tough for them to do in bad weather. And then you have the Seahawks plus 14, 14-1 plus 1,400. They get a home game this week, and then they will have to go on the road to probably to either Green Bay or New Orleans. I don't know the seedings off the top of my head, but Seahawks do have an excellent running game. If they do get in a cold weather game, I would feel like they would be more exposed in the dome. Although their passing game would definitely benefit from being in a dome. But those are teams that I think, besides the 2 teams I already have futures on, that would hedge my opportunity. So if I wanted to add the Chiefs to the mix in this add the Chiefs as one of my outcomes, I would go back to the arbitrage calculator, put in my first two bets, and then put in the third odds being the Chiefs, and it would tell me how much I needed to wager on the Chiefs to equally cover all my outcomes profit-wise. And I'm not going to go through that process today because it's just, it's too complicated to talk about the numbers, and I don't want to get all mathy. But that's why it's called a complex outcome. It's not easy to decide if you should hedge and when you should hedge. I think the Chiefs at the beginning of the season were like plus 450 to win the Super Bowl or plus 500. And the team that actually got the most money in the preseason to win the Super Bowl was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they were like plus 600 or plus 650. And right now they're plus 1,000 because they're going to have to play 3 straight road games just to get to the Super Bowl. And that's a tough road to hoe. So what I have down here at the bottom, you're exchanging some of the value on the tickets you hold for covering more outcomes. And that's a hedging complex outcome in a nutshell. You can't cover every outcome, but you're hedging what you hold by placing bets on some other outcomes and getting trading some of that value for more outcomes to keep your tickets alive, so to speak. So if you get in a situation where you have, a long shot team, say it was 100-1 to win the Super Bowl, and they're in the playoffs, but they're playing the top seed, and you think they might lose, that's the time to hedge that bet. I think Ohio State really does have a good chance to win this game against Alabama. Otherwise, I would hedge for the sure, unit and a half. But I think they have a legit shot at winning this game, so I'm going to let it ride. So that's all for futures today. Let's move on to the playoff games. Let's see what we got. Got 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday. The Colts at the Bills, 1 o'clock on Saturday. Bills minus 6.5. 51 is the total. Excuse me. Minus 6.5 to 54. I do lean to the over here. It's pretty mild in Buffalo right now, but it might be windy, and that could hurt the kicking game, so I would probably stay away from the over. You got an offense, a great offense versus above-average defense here with the Colts, although the Colts have given up a lot of passing yards in the last few weeks. I don't like this matchup for the Bills. Frank Reich is an excellent coach. He was the OC on the championship Eagles team. It's a different regime in Buffalo than when he was playing here, obviously. But he's one of the smartest men in football, in pro football, and I'm nervous about this game. I certainly am not going to wager on it. I don't like the total or the side here, but I will be rooting for the Bills this weekend to carry on and keep my futures ticket alive. Rams at the Seahawks, minus 342. I have it at minus 3.82, 43.95. Model likes Seattle minus 3. Model likes the over a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Seattle. It's January, so something like rain or freezing rain would be real bad for the over. It's put up or shut up time for Russell Wilson. I mean, the Seahawks probably had the worst 12-4 season that I can remember. They started off like 6-1 or 5-1, and then they started to struggle. They were playing 500 ball for like 6 weeks, and then they closed out the season with a couple wins. It's I'm not saying they were sandbagging, but it's time to see what they really have. The Rams are a good team. It's a tough playoff game for them. It's not going to be an easy outcome, but the model does like Seahawks minus 3. Bucks at Washington. Washington plus 8, 44.5. I have it at plus 6.84, 45.38. I don't like the total here. I like the footballers, the ballers as I like to call them, the Washington football team, +8. Obviously, 7's a key number. The Bucs are favored in this game, and assuming they're completely healthy, have a lot of weapons at wide receiver, tight end. But don't sleep on that Washington defense. They have one of the best defensive lines in the league, and their linebackers are pretty good too. Assuming they're all healthy, I don't have the injury report in front of me. I think that defensive line is going to be better than the Rams' defensive line within a year or two. Chase Young was a really, really good pick for them. So this number is just at 8. It's the Sportsbook saying we really want you to take Washington because we have a lot of money on the Bucs. And if you want to go narrative street, there's a trend for home teams winning with worse records, winning the Wildcard game. So outright, there's a trend that way, but I'm not big into trends. Ravens at Titans, and this game, these teams are going in different directions. The Ravens are kind of coming back from the crazy game where Lamar Jackson had to go to the locker room for whatever mysterious reason. And the Titans have just really struggled the last few weeks, and they barely beat the Texans last week, but they did win the division. So if you want to go narrative street, they're a dog at home on Wildcard weekend. But I like the Ravens here. I have the Ravens at 6.5-point favorites. Totals right on. They just have a better defense. So if I'm only giving up 3, I like that. They have the better kicker. We'll see how it goes. Bears at Saints. This should be the most lopsided game of the week. I say should because you never know. But the Saints at home are usually pretty tough to beat. -10, 47.5. -12.23, 49.15. So my model really likes the Saints at -10. I tend to agree here. Kamara was just money the last couple of weeks. Hopefully he will be available. There was a COVID issue. We'll see how the roster is set up. I mean, they have Latavius Murray as well. If they're both out, then Drew Brees is going to throw a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some Taysom Hill at running back or Ty Montgomery at running back. I don't know. I don't like laying double digits in the NFL, especially in a playoff game. So I'm probably not going to wager on that game, but my model really likes it. And then finally, Browns at the Steelers. Steelers -6 at home, 47.5 with Big Ben playing. I have at -5.12, 47.36. So once again, the total's right on. Again, I don't really know what the weather's going to be. I didn't research the weather here. Obviously, the Steelers play better at home. And the Browns coaching staff, the head coach and a few assistant coaches are out because of COVID. They will not be allowed at the game, and they can't coach remotely. Apparently, when they have those headsets on the sidelines, that's just wired through the stadium. They're not wireless, so they can't be the signals can't be intercepted or whatever. I don't know what the official rules are with all that, but so he, technically is not supposed to coach remotely. I don't know if that means he wouldn't be texting them on the sidelines or whatever, but Stefanski will not be there. If I saw this go to 8 or 9, I would definitely probably hop on Cleveland. They've been consistent with keeping most games close. They let some games get out of hand that they just kind of gave up on, but this 11-5 team, it's not, it's not a cupcake for the Steelers. So where that ends up is really more of where I would, that's a Sunday evening game. So, we'll see where it is on Sunday, but as it is right now, it's probably a pass for me. And then before I give you all my picks, let's talk about The NCAA football title game, Ohio State versus Alabama. Alabama -9, 75.5. I have it as -3.34, 74.72. So if you were a fade the public kind of person, I would think that you would bet the under in this game. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but from all impressions that we've gotten over the last couple of weeks with the conference championships and the semifinals, is that both of these teams have offenses that are basically unchallenged this year. So Northwestern kept Ohio State in check for a half, but they couldn't do it for a whole game. And Clemson just couldn't stop them in the first half. And essentially, when Ohio State scored their first touchdown in the second half, the game was over if the game would be managed correctly. But they, Clemson committed a turnover or two, and Ohio State just jumped on it. And then the game was pretty much out of reach by the end of the third quarter. Ohio State finished up by 21, and they were a 7-point dog. There's no question that both of these teams have excellent offenses. But who's the better team on defense? That's really what this game comes down to. And I might argue that Ohio State is the better team on defense. I feel like Ohio State was very opportunistic in their semifinal with Clemson. But this is a team that, like I said, that's why I thought the value was so high on that future, because they were never really challenged, even though they only played 5 regular season games. Crazy year, and that's why there's crazy value on this team. So I, like Ohio State. I definitely like the +9 if you want to just bet against the spread. But if you can get anything over +200, like 250, I'm not sure what it is right now. If it's still +255 against Alabama, I would take the money line or sprinkle some on the money line. Alabama can win, and that would be super boring. And if you got Alabama at -7, maybe you want to hedge if it goes to 10. Alabama did not play a great game against Notre Dame. They won handily, but they didn't look great. I think the law of averages regress to the mean, as they say, and the great Ohio State performance is coming down to here. The lousy Alabama performance is coming to here. That means a close game, and in that close game, I would want to be taking the 9 points, and that's how I look at it. Nothing's a sure thing. So let's go on to my picks, and don't have a whole lot of picks for you today, but we have, I think, some good value. And, of course, my future is still pending on Ohio State. But I'm going to hedge that a little bit by taking Ohio State +9. So if Ohio State wins my spread bet, I'll have made a profit on the whole shebang, even though it might only be $1 or $2, even if my future loses. So we've got the Washington football team, the Ballers, +8. Hopefully Alex Smith's knee does not explode, or his leg does not explode, and they can cover. We have the Ravens, -3.5. I know the line is -3. I took the -3.5 because I really like the Ravens to win going away here. And, technically that is not, they're probably going to beat the closing line. We'll see. The closing line is going to be better than 3.5 for sure, but we'll see how it goes. But I like the plus money there. And then Ohio State +9, -112. I really think it's going to be a close game, and Ohio State has a legit shot at winning outright. I've said that enough times on this show already, but getting 9 points is anything over a touchdown, I think, is great value. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully we can add my future in next week and really build the bankroll back up. So that's going to do it for the program. Thank you for watching, and next week is the start of the NHL season, and we've got a very interesting take on how that season's going to play out, so stay tuned for that. And we'll have some more NFL playoffs for you. And see you next time. So let me play the outro music. And let's go get some winners. Enjoy your weekend of football, everybody. Take care.